Hi everyone, I never know how to start these, so what's up? Today we're doing a realistic wrap-up of all of the books I read in 2024. I read 18 books, and honestly, to me, that's super impressive. I often watch like booktube and book TikToks, all that stuff, and these creators and people who make content around books are reading 90 plus books a year, which is like fabulous, great job. And I get it's like for their job, so of course they're gonna read a lot, but there is no way I could read that many books. I just get distracted, I get in reading slumps pretty easy. Nonetheless, I still enjoy reading a book or two. We're gonna review the books I did read. I wrote no notes going into this, so these are just gonna be my off the cuff, what I remember about these. But yeah. My name's Kate, by the way. If you're new here, please subscribe. It's free. Like what? It's free. It doesn't harm you at all. You can subscribe and then you don't have to watch anymore, okay? But I would prefer if you did, obviously. But subscribe or 5 years bad luck. I say that in all my videos now. It's the truth. Sorry, can't help it. We're gonna go through all 18 books. I'm kind of babbling here. I don't even know what I said or not. We're gonna go through our books, give you a quick little brief synopsis, no spoilers, my rating, whether you should read or not, all that. You get my point. Okay, let's begin. The first book I read last year was the third book in the ACOTAR series, A Court of Wings and Ruin. I'm sure if you're watching a book-related content, you've heard of the ACOTAR series, Sarah J. Maas. If you don't know anything and you've been living under a rock, it's a fantasy series about this world of humans and fae, which are like fairies with their like elf kind of magic people. And there's romance, all this stuff. But this one was my favorite out of the series so far. I gave it 4.5 stars. If you like fantasy books, the ACOTAR series is a good one. I'm a sensitive soul, which I've said in so many of my videos at this point, so if you don't know that, okay. But you might not if this is your first video of mine that you see. I'll insert pictures if I can find them. But I remember reading the end of this book sobbing. I was absolutely losing it. But I kind of like books like that. However, I will never be reading A Little Light. I will not read that. No. You can't make me because I feel like that would break me. Anyway, A Court of Wings and Ruin, third book in the ACOTAR series, 4.5 stars. Next book I read was the next one after A Court of Wings and Ruin in the series, which is A Court of Frost and Starlight. It's a little like novella. It's really short. I basically describe it as like the Christmas special book of the ACOTAR World series. It was fine. Kind of a dud. I'm not gonna lie. I gave it 3.5 stars. It was like literally her shopping for Christmas presents and part of it. I mean, it's not called Christmas there. It's like winter solstice or something. I could have done without. Next book, Everything I Know About Love, a Memoir by Dolly Alderton. I actually really liked this book. This is very popular across all the platforms, TikTok, YouTube. Dolly Alderton, I actually love her as an author. It's basically her going through her life in like her 20s, what she's learned about love, her different kind of mishaps, different things. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really liked this book and I gave it to a friend to read, which if I'm giving it to someone, you know, I liked it. Okay, next was another book by Dolly Alderton, which was her, I think it was her first fiction book. I might be wrong. I don't know. But it was Good Material by Dolly Alderton. And this is about a couple who broke up after like 5 years of dating. And it goes through the perspective of the guy and how he's kind of coping in the breakup, his life. He kind of feels like a loser. We don't know totally why they broke up. And like we hear kind of from both sides, but it's mostly from his perspective. And this got 4 stars. I really liked this book. The reason it got knocked down a little bit was because the male main character, I honestly forget his name. Andy? It might be Andy. Is kind of like, at the beginning of the book, he's very much like, nice guys finish last. It's so hard being me. And I'm like, dude, we really need to relax here. Overall, like kind of whole arc and story, duh, that's how books work. The kind of whole progression of the plot I thought was really good. Kind of one of those also like Sally Rooney where it's like not a lot happens. It's very character heavy. So if you like that, you'll like this. If you don't, you might not as much. Next I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. This was fun. It was a quick read. It's basically about a woman moves into a very wealthy couple's home to be their maid. The wife of the family is like super unhinged. She's like really mean to her and like they're telling her different things and like things start going a little awry and getting a little sinister, more creepy, etc. Gave this 3 stars. It was good. I liked it. I read it super quickly. The twist, I saw it all over the platforms. When I say the platforms, you know what I mean. Oh my god, the twist was so big. I didn't see it coming. Are you stupid? I mean, like, it wasn't like earth-shattering, the twist. Like, I kind of could see it coming, but it was still good. I think thrillery mystery books like that don't have to be earth-shattering all the time because they're fun to read. Like, the process of reading is better than the destination, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Next, I read the first book in the Red Rising series, Red Rising, duh, by Pierce Brown. And this series, I'm not a big science fiction person. I would prefer like more fantasy-y over science fiction. However, this book, one of my friends had it and they lent it to everybody and we passed it around the friend group and read it and it was phenomenal. So it's basically about like this main character, Darrow, who is a red. He lives in like the center of Mars and he's basically living his whole, this isn't a spoiler, this is like on the back of the book. So like I'm not spoiling anything. Teddy just sat on my phone. He's a red, which is like his class basically. And he is a miner in the center of Mars trying to make Mars habitable for humans until he finds out one day that Mars is habitable by humans already and the entire how our solar system is, and he's actually like living under this other class called the Golds, who like run society and like is making everybody else, all these other classes of people, they each have like a color. There's like blues, obsidians, gray, like they're basically like oppressing all of these other groups, and he gets pissed, and it's kind of his journey of going through that. But the world building of this book, the like characters, again, another crier. But this, I gave 4.5 stars. It was so well done. It's thought out. It definitely took a little more like brain power than a book like Akatar or something. Like, you just have to pay attention a little bit more. Sometimes I can read books without like thinking, you know what I mean? It kind of gave like a little Hunger Games. It was fabulous. I would 100% recommend this book. Yes, it's science fiction because it's space, but it's not like super heavy. That was a great book. 4.5 stars. I would give it 5 stars, but I gave another one 5 stars, so wait. I then read The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent, which I believe is in a series. I didn't finish the series. This book I gave 3.5 stars. It was kind of meh. It's about basically like this girl who is a human in a world of vampires, of course. But she like is the adopted daughter of like the vampire king, and she's put in like these games with other vampires, and like she has to try to survive even though she's not a vampire, so she's like disadvantaged. There's like a little like enemies to lovers type vibe. It was fine, but it was so every cliche there is in fantasy and every like enemies to lovers cliche that there is was used in this, to the point where I was like, okay, I get it. And the main character was very much like, I cannot stand a main character who is so like, I'm just so simple and plain, like nothing special about me, knock it off. And our main character in this book was very much like that. Moved relatively quickly, so I gave it 3.5 stars. Next, this is my 5-star of the year, which is the second in the Red Rising series, Golden Sun. This book, 5 stars. Obviously the second in the series. I can't totally spoil what happens in the first book because it leads up to this, but it's continuing Darrow's journey, trying to dismantle the system of the Golds, or the ruling class. Oh my god, it was so good. And like, this is not a spoiler, so like if you think it is, get off your high horse. The ending of the book had me actually gagged. I took a time lapse, I really hope I still have it, of me reading the end of the book, because like, again, this is one of the books as well me and my friends all passed around and read. They all told me that the ending was really good, so I was like, okay, whatever. Gagged. Like, completely like did not see that coming. There's some twists I feel like at the end of the books where I'm like, okay, I can see where that, I get where that comes from. Not this one. I was literally sitting there like mind blown. It was so, I wish I could wipe my mind and read it again. Like, but that was my 5-star of the year. Again, you have to use a little bit of brain power to read it because there's different jargon that is like used in their world, and you have to kind of figure all that stuff out, but so good. Like, if you read any of the books in this, you should read that one. I mean, that also means you have to read the first one, but like, sorry. The next one I read was The Women by Kristen Hanna. I read this with my sister and my mom in a little book club we did, which was actually really fun. But this is about, it's a fiction book, but historical fiction based on real life, about women in the Vietnam War, American female nurses who were deployed to Vietnam during the war to be nurses and medics and help the soldiers, which is true, which is a very real thing, and kind of their role in the war. And a lot of it, like, I know the basics of the Vietnam War, but I didn't know everything, obviously. And so unfortunately, which is true of a lot of things, the women's role and the women who aided in the Vietnam War were often forgotten and not really talked about at all, when thousands of women were deployed to Vietnam and made really big differences and like suffered their own trauma with the war. So like, follows this woman who is a nurse who goes to Vietnam, obviously very traumatic, comes back, people didn't believe that women were there. Obviously it's a fictionalized story, but it's based on real things that happened. And I thought it was really insightful. I feel like I learned a lot. This will definitely make you cry. So I gave that 4.25 stars because there were a couple of parts where I was like, there's no way all these bad things can happen to one person. I can get maybe 2 or 3, but or like things happen to different people, but like every bad thing that could have happened in this scenario to this girl happened. Overall, super good. And one time I saw an old lady in the airport reading it. I was with my mom because me and my mom read it together, and I was like, look what that lady's reading. And she looked so nice, and her husband was wearing like a World War II veteran's hat. Like, they were very old, and I went up to her, I said, oh my goodness, like that book is so good, like you'll really enjoy it. And she's like, oh sweetheart, thank you, like I've heard such good things, I'm so excited. And interactions like that remind me that like life is worth living. She was such a sweet lady, and that is a really good book, and I love bonding with people over things I like and that they would like too. That's unselfish almost. You get my point. Okay, next I read Scythe, which is also a fantasy book. Sorry, it's YA, so it's pretty easy to read, but basically it's in like a future world where we have conquered mortality, so like people can live forever, no one dies. So there are people appointed in society called Scythes who kill people to keep the population down, and it's about these 2 teenagers who are taken in as apprentices to be Scythes in this world. It was actually, for a YA book, very good. I feel like I'm saying that about everything. It was much more like introspective and deeper than I thought it was going to be, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars, and I would recommend that one. Next I read The Wishing Game by Meg Schaefer, which this is just a cozy, cute book. Like, it'll make you feel good, it'll make you happy. I don't think I cried, but I honestly might have at some some point. It's about this children's book author. Think like the Magic Treehouse books, if you read those as a kid. The author who wrote all those books lives on an island all by himself that is basically modeled after the books he wrote, and he hosts a competition, not like Squid Game's very happy, healthy fun, where he invites a couple, now adults, but once children who read his books, come to the island and win, I believe, the manuscript of the newest book he wrote, because he hasn't written in so many years or whatever. Super fun, it's cute. I gave it 4 stars again because the main character, she wasn't annoying as much, but there were times where I'm like, you're delusional. Overall, it was very comforting. It reminded me a lot of the childhood books I read, and it's not super long. So next I read Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. Okay, I have like a love-hate relationship with this book because it made me love R.F. Kuang as an author. However, the plot of this book is a kind of smallish author who's not super popular, not doing super well, witnesses one of her friends who is a very successful author die very tragically. Like, she literally chokes on a pancake. And while she's there at her apartment, she finds her manuscript of a book that's basically done but not published. And our main character takes that manuscript and edits it a little bit and passes it off as her own. Like, she is just making bad decision after bad decision. It's just so rough to watch her. I mean, it's very interesting to know that like the main character and like the person you're reading as sucks. But for me, it made me so anxious where I was like, oh my God. Everything she was doing, I'm like, girl, what are you thinking? For me, it got to a point where I was like too stressed. It takes place in DC, which is where I live. So I was like, hey, I know where that is. When they would mention places. I gave it 3.5 stars. That being said, R.F. Kuang is super, super talented, and it pushed me to get more of her books. So the next book I read was a book called Berlin by Bia Seaton, which is about a young girl in her 20s who moves to Berlin, doesn't know anybody, doesn't speak German super well, and how she's kind of navigating life. There's a mystery element to it of like, there might be someone following her, we don't totally know, but like her making friends, going on dates, kind of struggling to find her place. It was akin to a Sally Rooney book where it's like nothing happens. It's a lot about the character. I liked it because I like hearing about Berlin and the city, and I have a soft spot for Germany. I gave it 3.5 stars because it wasn't anything crazy good. It was really short too, so like you can power through it pretty quickly. You can hear Teddy snore a little bit. Anyway, the next book I read was Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. Fabulous. I'm gonna zoom in when I say that. This is again another kind of no plot, all vibes, which maybe is a theme. I think if they're done well, they are so good. If they're done poorly, they're ass. No between. This one is basically about a couple who gets married, a huge age gap. The man's like 40, the woman's like 20. And their relationship and how it affects other people around them, how they work together, their lives together. It takes place in New York City. It was just one of those where like nothing happens, but I don't know how to explain it. Like, I really liked it. I think you should read it. I feel like Coco Mellors as an author is similar to Dolly Alderton, so that's why I think I liked it. We're almost done, I promise. I read Home Before Dark by Riley Sager, which is a thriller mystery book. This is basically, if you've seen Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, if you haven't, click off this. It's okay, I'm giving you permission, and go watch that because that is an excellent TV series. It's basically like that plot, but in a book, which is time periods of like when the main character is a little girl, and as an adult, her father passes away and she gets ownership of the house that she lived in for a summer as a child, where they abandoned the house in the middle of the night because things were getting spooky. And so it switches back and forth to her like recounting that summer when she was there and all of this spooky stuff was happening, and her as an adult now going back to like maintain it, get it ready to sell. Things are still kind of unsettled, figuring out the mystery. Her dad like wrote a book about their experience in the house, and he obviously blames supernatural causes for all this stuff, which she like dismisses. It was interesting, it was fun, read it pretty quickly. The plot twist, I was kind of like, eh. And not that I guessed it, but I was like, oh, that's it. This is one of those books where it's more about the process of reading than like the actual ending. Cool, I gave this 3 stars. Next, I read Beautiful Boy, a memoir that a father wrote about his son who battled drug addiction throughout his life. And it recounts his son as a child, getting older, going into drug addiction. This will make you cry for sure. You'll sob. I literally, when I was reading this, I'm like, you know, and I'm maybe one day a parent and have children. When they're old enough, I'm gonna force them to read this book because I think it is a very good, not necessarily a cautionary tale, but like it really dives into like how complex and difficult and hard addiction is. So I give it 4.25 stars. I don't love nonfiction, but like memoirs I do like, so that's a great book. We only have 2 more books and they're in a series. The last 2 books I read were the first 2 books in the Naturals series. So the first one is called The Naturals and the second one is called Killer Instinct. These were great because at the end of this year, or 2024, I was in the biggest reading slump ever. I was like, everything sucks, I don't want to read. This is a YA book. It's a lot like Criminal. See, I'm relating it to TV because I watch a lot of TV and movies too. This is basically like Criminal Minds, but in a book form. It's called The Naturals because it's about this girl who gets recruited by the FBI along with a bunch of other teenagers and who have these like special abilities, not supernatural abilities, but like natural abilities, aka why it's called The Naturals, that make them really good for FBI stuff. So the main character is really good at like profiling people and figuring things out. There's one person who's really good at like reading emotions. There's one person who can tell if people are lying, and they're recruited by the FBI to solve cold cases, but obviously there's cases also going on that they're not supposed to get involved in, but obviously end up getting involved in as well. It reads super fast. It was good. It was interesting. The plot twist wasn't crazy for the first one, but like fine, good enough. It kept me going, which I think is the most important for a book getting me out of a reading slump, because I needed the fast paced, easy to read, all that stuff. I gave both of them 3.5 stars. They did the job that they needed to do. Also, the main character, this is like the final boss of annoying main characters. Don't make me sound like a hater, because I'm not, but she is so annoying. There are times where I'm like, I'm not rooting for you because you're so annoying. There's more books in the series, but after the second one, I was like, I'm done. Those are my 18 books. That is my realistic haul, like recap, I guess, because I can't read more than 50 books a year. If you want more book content or just general hobby content, let me know. I wanted to make this because I think it's important for people out there to say, oh, okay, I don't have to read 1 million books a year to consider myself a reader, because I consider myself a reader. And I didn't read 1 million, I read 18. And honestly, I think that's the most I've read in several years. I think I read 12 last year, or like the year prior, 2023. So you can be a reader even if you're reading 1 book a year. You're a reader then, and reading is important. Thank you so much for watching. If you do anything, just subscribe, please. Like, comment, let me know what your favorite book out of this list is, or just favorite book you read this past year. I'm not wearing makeup today, sorry. Oh, Teddy wants a snack. You want a snack? So that's my cue, I gotta go. Okay, love you, subscribe, or 5 years bad luck. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Bye.